Welcome to CGT in Live with Dean Yang, and I'm standing in the media center for the two sessions in the next Chinese top political event of an annual of every year. And today, behind my back, this is a press conference hall where a press conference is going to be held by China's central bank. This is the People's Bank of China. Well, in light with an announcement an hour ago about the U.S. President Donald Trump's potential meeting with the supreme leader of the DPRK. I mean, everyone I think sitting in that press conference hall is longing for some predictability about the world, and I think that is the key point of this press conference. Our central bank, in charge of China's monetary policy, is going to provide some certainty in the world and in the moment of unpredictability. Well, in China, there's a very, very popular metaphor, especially among investors in stock market and in China's stock market and the bond market. It's the central bank is always compared to a mother, and among Chinese investors, they call the central bank the central mother, because the central bank is always coming to, or at least they believe the central bank would come to the rescue whenever the market is lacking liquidity. So let's start with today's live with a little bit review of what the central mother had been doing over the past 5 years. Actually, I extracted from central government's work report. It says that monetary policy has remained prudent and neutral. Well, that's quite different from my view on a mother's love. Neutral. So, and then it continues saying that the M2 money, and another is white money category, the M2 money supply growth rate has been trending downward, while credit and aggregate financing here has seen moderate growth. Differentiated policies such as targeted reserve requirement ratio cuts and targeted relending have been adopted to strengthen support for key fields and weak links. I mean, apart from domestic monetary policies, the central bank had also pushing forward internationalization of RMB, that's Chinese currency, and to push it into to finally succeeded in including the RMB in the special drawing right of the IMF, International Monetary Fund. And apart from that, the international the international of the currency will help to pave the way for deeper trade cooperation with the rest of the world. So what will China's central bank do in relation to our monetary policy? I mean, there's also some facts laid down by in the government report. It says that the prudent monetary policy will remain neutral, with easing or tightening only as appropriate. We need to make sure that the government needs to make sure that the wealth of aggregate monetary supply is well controlled and maintain moderate growth in M2 money supply and credit and aggregate financing. And some commentators, some observers of the Chinese economy have found that actually an estimate of M2 increase rate has not been mentioned in the government report. That marks a slightly difference from the previous years, and many observers believe that this could mean that the monetary policy will flexible a little bit, because last year the estimate of M2 growth was around 12.5%. Well, at the end of the year, actually, the actual increase rate of M2 was just 8.5%. So this huge gap between the estimate and the actual outcome actually could, or in some people's view, could bear some influence on the not mentioning of the M2 increase this year. So let's move a little bit to inside to have a look at the press conference, which is going to be held in about 5 minutes. And for today's press conference, we've also jotted down some questions that we hope we can ask the central bank governor. And one of them is China's, because now China's been wrestling with the debt, and that has kind of everything to do with the local government and the companies out there. How much money, how much loan they can get from from banks, how much loan they can get from the banks, and that is I think that is a key point for the investors to watch for at today's press conference, because they need to know how much policy is going to rein in, or actually will go the other, the other direction, so that they can, how much loans they can get for the next year, and then that will help, which will help them to expand their business. And another question is, so there isn't an estimate on how quickly the M2 will be expect to grow in this year's report, like I just mentioned. So what does this actually mean? Because we have a lot of observations and comments from the market, from outsiders, but now we need to get some insight from the central bank governors, if that's possible. And another question actually is concerning the central bank governor himself. I mean, he's quite outspoken recently, especially his comments on the Minsk moment. Actually, it's a comment on China should steer away from Minsk moment. And the Minsky moment is the sudden collapse of asset value that could bring down the entire economy with it. And the central governor of the People's Bank of the People's Bank of China had actually warned about this moment, and it was viewed as a very, very blunt and honest comment, and also it raised some alarms among Chinese investors. So we will be looking at that front as well, to see if the central bank governor to the People's Bank of China will make any similar comments, or actually he has his view changed on this regard. I think, well, if I don't have the opportunity to raise that question with him, I think some other reporters might raise that question as well. And also there's another concern with among Chinese investors and economists about this potential trade war between China and the United States, the world's two largest economies. And will that be influencing China's monetary policy in one way or another? It's another a subject that is likely to come up today. And actually, if you stay tuned to all platforms of CGTN, you will be able to watch the entire press conference on Facebook, on our application, and the Weibo, as well as Twitter. And also, because this is a very important press conference, it's about China's monetary policy and it's about China's economy, and so it will be live broadcast on our television channel as well. So you can tune in all the platforms with the CGTN to follow up what will happen in 2018 in relation to China's monetary supply. So let's have a little bit look inside, because I can hear the music is on, so probably the press conference is going to begin in a minute soon. So I'll let the camera enter the room first, so you can see so many reporters. They know for sure what is key what is key about China's future, and where to seek the answers for all those big questions about China's economy. Because nowadays the volume of the economy is so large that nobody in the world can ignore the impact any Chinese policy changes can have on the rest of the world. And actually, from that, I think it's because we need to. Let's see. Now I'm holding the camera, and the area that our camera now is pointing at is the tunnel where our central bank governor is expected to walk out and onto the stage. And there are two of his deputies attending the press conference as well. And we can see there are 5 seats on the stadium, and 3 of them are reserved for the central bank governors, and another one is for the translator, and there's also a moderator. And the press conference is scheduled to begin at 10 o'clock Beijing time, and now it is slightly delayed, but not that much. So let's wait and see what is going to happen next. And don't go away if the live stream on our digital platforms is over, because we will soon bring you now we can see. Yeah, we can see the governor. The governors have stepped up on the stage. So I'm going to wrap up here, and I will let the TV take over. But we don't go away. The entire press conference will be brought live to you. Will brought live to you on all our digital platforms. So stay tuned to CGTN. Stay tuned to CGTN. To yeah, everybody is laughing. But now the reporters, they are shouting. They're trying to get the attention from the governor to say hello to the camera. And yeah, like just mentioned, don't go away and stay tuned to CGT and digital platforms. We will bring you the entire press conference. And if you have any question you'd like to ask, and leave it on the comment section, and we will try to seek the answer for you. And we will get the answers from the
好了，拍照的时间到了。请前面拍照的记者回到自己的位子上。各位记者朋友们，大家上午好，欢迎参加第3届。
Dear friends from the press, welcome to the press conference for the first session of the 13th National People's Congress. Today's topic is financial reform and development. We are delighted to welcome the Governor of People's Bank of China, Mr. Zhou Xiaochuan, and the Deputy Governor of PBOC, Mr. Yi Gang, and Deputy Governor of PBOC and Director of SAFE, Mr. Pan Gongsheng. They will answer your questions on the financial reform and development.
Today, we're very pleased to have with us Comrade Zhou Xiaochuan, Governor of People's Bank of China, Comrade Yi Gang, Deputy Governor of PBOC, and Comrade Han Gongsheng, Deputy Governor of PBOC and Administrator of the State Administration of Foreign Exchange. They will take up questions about China's financial reform and development.
这个区的第3排右手第二位记者。
Hello, I'm from Reuters. China's financial deleveraging has tightened monetary conditions and led to a 47 basis point rise in average corporate lending rate last year. So I'm eager to know whether the PBOC is worried about the impact of rising borrowing costs on the economy, and whether it will continue to follow the Federal Reserve in raising interest rates this year. Related question on the currency: the yuan has rebounded this year, and capital flight eased. So whether the central bank will lose capital controls and completely remove counter-cyclical factors in setting the yuan midpoint to pave the way for a clean float of the currency. Thank you.
您好，我是路透社的记者。2017年，在金融去杠杆的背景下，中国非金融企业贷款加权平均利率上升0.47个百分点，企业融资成本的上升是否会影响经济发展？在高借贷成本可能影响经济增长的情况下，今年央行是否仍将跟随美联储脚步提升利率？中国政府是否将放松对资本外流的管制？在设定人民币中间价时，是否会完全取消使用逆周期因子？谢谢。
我先说一点，然后你补充了哈。这个全球经济呢，这个经过了在金融危机中啊，经过这么多年的这个艰难
After a tough journey, of financial disasters, the global economy is reassuring, and we have exit from the quantitative easing strategy for a lot of nations. This is actually generally a good thing. However, the low interest and the expanding of quantities is our general trend. And the impact of this trend is predictable. In terms of China, we have transitioned from the traditional development growth model into a quality-driven growth model. The old normal of quantity-driven is more about economic growth that's driven by the quantity. In the future, that kind of economic growth model will be lowered down. On the other hand, we mustn't lose sight of the total volume of currency is very large, and that will reduce the traditional growth model that's highly rely on investment. And the currency basket will be made for use of effectively. That doesn't necessarily mean that we will have a very tight use of expenditure. In terms of our currencies, it will go up in terms of both quantity and quality, and they will also be lowered down. In this case, I think the policies of foreign currency exchange rate, we will have relative policies, and the foreign exchange rate increased 0.4%. Our CPI increased a little bit, and PPI also increased 6.3%. The real interest rate has stabilized, and the actual interest rate matters more, and it is also go in accordance with our currency volume. Just as you mentioned that the Federal Reserve is about to increase its interest rate. However, our policy is mainly in accordance with our domestic economic situation, and we will have a general consideration of both domestic and international situation. Our foreign exchange is generally stabilized, and we will push forward to a stabilized policy of foreign exchange rate. Thank you. In your question, you mentioned that in our next step, what's our policies and measures in terms of foreign reserve. We have been through high risk in terms of foreign exchange reserve, and we will have a set of macro control in foreign capital inflow and outflow. We have increased our risk management reserve, and also our bidding model in terms of yuan to US dollar. Since 2017, our foreign capital flow and also foreign exchange reserve is generally in balance and also stabilized. The main transaction practice in the market also is stabilized. And we have exited our macro control. Also, in the midterm of 2017, the authority launched a directory in terms of foreign investment, and it is going transparent and publicized. Also, in terms of the supervision of counter-legal behavior, we will strengthen our supervision that is mainly focused on fraud, black transaction, and also we will enhance our supervision from the regulators. This will not be different due to different cycles. It will remain consistent. Thank you.
金融时报中国金融新闻网记者提问：我们知道近年来金融领域的这个对外开放的程度是越来越高了。那么今年的政府工作报告呢，进一步提到要有序的开放银行卡清算市场，放开外资保险经纪公司经营范围限制，放宽或取消银行、证券、基金管理、期货、金融资产管理公司等外资股比限制，还有统一中外资银行的市场准入标准。那么请问下一步对于金融业的对外开放，我们央行有什么具体的打算呢？谢谢。
With financial news, in recent years, the financial sector has been opened wider and wider to the outside world. It is pointed out in this year's government work report that China will face an opening up of bank card clearing and other markets, lift restrictions on the scope of operations of foreign invested insurance agent companies, and ease or lift restrictions on the share of foreign-owned equity in companies in sectors including banking, securities, fund management, futures, and financial asset management. China will also make market entry standards the same for both Chinese and foreign banks. What measures will be taken by the PBOC to further open up the financial sector? Thank you.
您刚才自己也说出来了。
You also mentioned about the market access. It needs to open wider. We've prepared for it for years. And since 1990s, in the end of 1990s, during the preparation of China's entry to WTO, we have been preparing for wider opening up of market access. But at that time, Asia's economy was prosperous, so we lagged behind. And later on, China joined the WTO. So in terms of market access, we achieved relatively openness. And after years of joining WTO, we continue opening up. But we encountered global financial crisis. And now we are entering a new stage in terms of market access. We can be bold enough and open it wider. On the other hand, except for allowing the foreign institutions to enter and work in China, the opening up has its macro meaning, including China's financial institutions going abroad. In recent years, China's financial institutions have set up branches worldwide and operated multiple types of business and have been in good cooperation with other institutions. One of the key reasons is the internationalization of renminbi. Renminbi has also contributed to China's going global. Except for going abroad, in domestic market, renminbi is also a contributor. In the past 5 years, we have the Shanghai-Hong Kong connection. These are all the opening up of economy, and this openness means the currency exchange path China has made its way, and in the future China will further enhance this. In terms of policy, for most of the time we did enough research, and now we are waiting for the timing in order to promote the policy into practice. And also, we are growing up during the market engagement and involvement. And during the opening up, we will learn from our own role and learn from the international competition. I want to give 2 supplementary points. The first one is the CPC Central Committee highlighted the opening up of the economy. In the 19th CPC National Congress, it says openness will bring growth. So we will further implement and uphold the spirit of the Central Committee of the CPC, and President Xi chaired the 16th Central Economic Meeting and also said to open up financial development and market is also vital to China's financial and economic development. We, PBOC, and the financial institutions should uphold this spirit and implement the deployment of the CPC Central Committee. Second, you mentioned the easing and cancellation of some restrictions to the foreign institutions. Actually, we've offered this in order to offer equal basis to foreign institutions, but this doesn't mean the easing of the requirements. They are still under strict control of the laws and legislation, and we will further complete the legislative regulations and institutions in order to safeguard the economy.
央行呢刚刚发布了2月份的外汇储备的数据，请问为什么外汇储备在经历了10几个月的增长之后呢，突然出现一个下降？这是否意味着外汇市场的形势呢会有较大的变化？谢谢。
With China Radio International, the PBOC has just released the foreign exchange reserve figures for February. Why is there such an abrupt fall after more than 10 months of growth? Does this imply major changes on the foreign exchange market? Thank you.
这个外汇储备的数量呢，这个大家理解呢，就是这个数字呢。
The volume of foreign exchange reserve, from the perspective of accounting, has a lot of knowledges. First of all, forex reserve is calculated according to US dollar. And some people mentioned that we should calculate according to SDR because the inflation and depreciation of US dollar can have a huge impact on the forex exchange reserve. And also, the fluctuation of USD is also subjective to the US dollar policies. And sometimes when the US dollar inflated will mean that the forex reserve in Japan or in other countries lower it down. Also, in a lot of programs, in the perspective of accounting, is accounting to market. That means that bonds, securities, or other forms of assets the price of those assets will go according to the change of market. That means that some products will go up and some will go down. And if you calculate according to Martin's market, that means that their price will also fluctuate. However, from the situation of China's market situation, nothing has changed. Our forex reserve has lowered down to 3 trillion since 2017. And this March, our reserve also have lowered down to 2.1 trillion. And that is due to the currency exchange rate to US dollars. Also, the bond index has lowered down. The Eurozone, America, and also Japan's stock index went down from 4% to 5%. That means that also translated to a lower down of our forex reserve. In general, our forex market is very stable, and the distribution of forex reserve is at a reasonable rate. And in the future, it will also stay stable.
谢谢主持人，我来自外文局中国网。我的问题是，在推动人民币国际化方面，今年会有哪些主要举措？谢谢。
With China.org.cn, what measures will be taken to advance RMB internationalization this year? Thank you.
人民币国际化呢，应该说主要的政策呢，该。
The RMB internationalization has witnessed sufficient policies, which means it allows to use the RMB in trading and investment. Also, RMB has been involved in the IMF's SDR. So the main procedures have been done. However, for the market engagement institutions, if they are willing to use RMB to conduct investment or for the critical commodities or for reserve, and how much of their willingness is, it takes time. We cannot force them to use RMB. This is just to their own willingness. So in the future, we will gradually promote the internationalization of RMB, and for the government or for the central bank, we will continue first in the capital market, both in China and the world. We will enhance the interaction and connection. There are many things remain to be done. As you have seen in recent years, we have witnessed progress. On the other hand, we need also communication and interaction except for capital market. As China is promoting steadily of the exchange of currency and financial products, but there are still restrictions and barriers. We will continue to open up, and which will contribute to RMB internationalization. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm with Bloomberg News. In the new regulatory structure, what will the role of the PBOC be, and will the central bank consider a UK model? Also, I'd like to ask a second question. Last October, you warned against the complacency in face of certain financial risks, which you said were hidden, complex, sudden, contagious, and hazardous. Since then, one of those risks, the outstanding debt, has only increased, albeit at a slower pace. This morning, we saw some new data showing aggregate financing up 11% again. As you prepare to step down, how would you assess those risks now, and how would you say that enough is being done to ward off the problem that you said could happen? Thank you.
您好，我是彭博社的记者。我想问的问题是，在中国新的这个金融监管架构之中，中国央行将扮演什么样的角色？中国是否会学习英国建立双峰监管模式？另外，周行长，去年您还曾经对金融风险过度乐观的情绪做出过警告。您当时说，金融风险呈现隐蔽性、复杂性、突发性、传染性、危害性的特点，但是我们看到中国的债务水平并未下降，而是缓慢上升。我们了解到您可能即将卸任了，请问您如何评估当前的债务风险？您是否认为中国已经采取了应当采取的措施来避免您所警告的后果？谢谢。
你这个问题问的有点多，是吧？我怕记不住，是吧
？That's a lot of questions. The reform of regulatory structure, it's still undergoing. During the last few days of MPC, deputies will have an in-depth discussion of national reform. That includes regulatory structure reform. However, some of the basic policies has been launched during last year's Central Economic Conference. The main direction has been laid out, and following that, we have established the stabilization of financial risk control department, and it will play an important role in terms of controlling our financial risk. We do have some blank space in regulatory structure, and we must catch up with those loopholes. Also, some of the rules of regulatory structure have some shortcomings and shortboarding, and that will tap the reg policies and new rules. There are also some existing financial risks from the financial institution or quasi-financial institution, and we must correct those misbehaviors to ensure a healthy financial market. Later on, PBOC will coordinate the enhancement of the coordination between various financial stakeholders to improve the effectiveness and efficiency. And I believe that is the all aspects of regulatory structure reform. And we will look into future aspects of a further step into regulatory structure reform. In our reform, it's mainly based on our domestic conditions, and we will also learn lessons from the international experiences. During the referencing period, we also looked into the UK model. However, currently, we should still have a further research rather than just adapt the UK model immediately. With regard to the general debt level in China, the skyrocketing situation of debt level has been lowered down. And actually, the increase rate is lower than the nominal GDP. We will continue our effort in deleveraging. In this stage, there are all kinds of indicators that we should have a look. For example, we have put decisive effort into shadow banking. And some of the operations has go back within to the financial institution. For example, the increase of different financial institutions' financing practice is going negative rather than positive. You cannot see that as a leveraging rather than deleveraging. Our deleveraging process has been going well, and it is very promising and clear. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，我是澎湃新闻记者。2017年以来，多个城市住房信贷政策明显收紧，最近也有反映个人住房贷款额度偏紧，利率上升。请问行长，今年住房信贷政策还会有什么新的变化吗？目前房地产金融风险的状况如何？请您介绍一下，谢谢。
With the paper, since 2017, housing credit policy has significantly tightened in many cities, and recently, some see a tightening of mortgage lending and interest rate hike. Will there be more changes to the housing credit policy this year? And what is your assessment of the current real estate finance? Thank you.
说我们请唐博士。
好，你这围绕着房地产，实际上是有好几个问题啊。第一个问题关于住房贷。
There are a lot of questions in terms of real estate. The first one is the housing credit loan and interest. In the year 2017, the housing credit loan increased by 4 trillion nationwide, with a 22% increase in rate. And overall speaking, the RMB credit loan increased by 17%, but for housing credit loan it increased by 22%. And in this January, it increased by 21.4%, but for RMB it increased by 13.2%. So you can see the housing credit loans growth is 10% more than the growth of RMB loan. So last year, although it decreased, the increasing rate lowered down, but it's still increasing, and the amount is still large. For some bank, at a special time, due to their debt and asset imbalances, they may release the capital in a slower way. This may happen. About the housing credit loan interest, is a little bit higher, but from the long run, it's very low. The commercial banks has considered the risks of real estate, and set the price and interest of housing credit. This generally be in accordance with the market of interest rate. And we will strongly implement the differentiated housing policies, and especially for the new citizens. And second is about the risks lie in the real estate. We've continued prudent housing policies, and the risks in real estate are controlled. I want to give you some figures. The bad loan rate is less than 1% from the banks, and generally speaking, the bad loan rate is less than 1.8%. So you can see the housing bad loans are lower than the general bad loans. And for the issuance of housing loan, China is upholding very prudent and secret policy for the down payment rate. Last year is 37%. This is very prudent, even worldwide speaking. And during this process, we've noticed that the personal housing credit loan, in terms of leveraging, it increased greatly. So there may be risks in finance. We've closely observing these risks.
.谢谢主持人，我有一个问题想要提给周行长，就是在2017年，很多人认为金融改革的步伐走得有些慢了。然后大家认为这可能与防风险有关系。接下来2018年，防风险仍然是金融领域的重头。那么这会不会导致大家有这样一种担忧，防风险会导致金融改革与发展进入停滞，或者说步伐放得更缓？请问周行长怎么看？谢谢。
My question is that in 2017, some people say that the financial reform has a bit slowed down. Probably the reason is the need to prevent risks. And in 2018, to prevent risks is still a vital task in the financial sector. But will this lead to worry of the people that the task to prevent risks will lead to a further slowdown of financial reform and development in this year? Thank you.
这个大家也知道呢，金融行业啊，这个像银行啊，这个之类的。
The financial sector, especially the banking sector, it's a high leverage level and high risk level sector. Therefore, if we have done a good effort in terms of risk prevention, then the financial service will be laid a solid foundation. As long as the foundation is well laid, then the development will go very well. And risk prevention has been always a vital component of financial reform. First of all, they are not opponent but consistent with each other. Because the existence of risk, we have launched a lot of new policies and regulations. Some of our major financial reforms, for example, during the Asia financial crisis, we have noticed our shortcomings or shortboardings in our financial market. Therefore, risk prevention is a huge, important component of our financial reform. Also, during the convening of our financial work meeting, President Xi Jinping made important deployment. Later on, we have established the Committee of Financial Stabilization, and we have enhanced our effort in risk prevention. In enhancing the regulatory structure to prevent risk, we will step forward at a faster pace. For example, the internationalization of RMB and also the without of restriction in market access. Thank you.
谢谢主持人。周行长您好，我是上海人民广播电台的记者。我的问题是这样的：我们注意到今年的这个政府工作报告当中呢，对于货币政策的表述是稳健的货币政策保持中性，松紧适度。那么和往年相比，松紧适度这样的表述是比较新的。对于市场来讲，我们如何来理解松紧适度？谢谢。
With Shanghai People's Radio, we've read this year's government work report, and we have noticed that relevant expression about the financial sector is as follows. The prudent monetary policy will stay neutral, with easing or tightening as appropriate. Here, the expression with easing and tightening as appropriate is the new expression. How can the market interpret such a new expression? Thank you.
稳健的货币政策，松紧适度这样的一个表述呢？
The prudent monetary policy and the easing or tightening as appropriate, indeed, is targeted at the financial monetary policy in order to serve the real economy. As we know, China's economy maintains steadfast growth, and whether the policy should be easing or tightening, we can see from following aspects. The first one is the credit loan should serve the real economy and the small-sized corporations, and also to serve the rural questions. And also, China's economy has many highlights of innovations, and we will see whether these innovations can timely be supported by the financial sector or not. Meanwhile, we should also pay attention to the risk prevention and also financial reform. So to ease it or tighten it as appropriate will rely on the real economy, whether the real economy can be supported effectively or not, and whether we can create a risk prevention and a stabilized environment to promote financial reform. And thus, we can offer the appropriate monetary environment to the high-quality development. We need to stabilize the financial environment. And for the flow, we will see whether the market interest rate is stabilized, whether the preparation fund is ready, and other indicators are within reasonable condition, and then we will consider whether to ease it or tighten it. And another prominent reason is during this year's government work report, it says the macro monetary policy should go in accordance with the social demand and social market. This is a new highlight. For the long run, we've used M2 to be the main indicator, which played a very critical role. And we also need to see, to identify the new momentum, like the deepening of the market and financial innovations, make the correlation between M2 and the financial development blank. And sometimes it's even unclear. This is similar worldwide. And in past years, the impact of M2 on commercial banks also were great. And for most countries worldwide, they've gradually withdrew the M2 indicator because the lower correlation between M2 and financial development, they've gradually withdrawn the utilization of M2 indicator. And in order to uphold and meet the demand of new era's high-quality development, we need to continue optimizing the structure of currency and monetary policy, and from a more macro scope, it will witness a reasonable growth, no matter easing or tightening.
谢谢主持人，我是中央电视台央视网和央视新闻移动网的记者。就是刚才易纲行长的那个解释，因为我们2个小时之前刚刚央行公布的2月末的 M2 的增速是8.8%，因为我们看了一下，这已经是连续10个月维持在个位数的增长了。所以想问，刚才2018年政府工作报告里面也提到了，没有给具体的数字，请问未来我们应该怎么样去理解这个 M2 的增速？什么样是合理的增长？然后怎么去理解2018年的货币的供给？谢谢。
With CCTV, according to the figures released a couple of hours ago, in February, M2 grew by 8.8%, and it is the 10th consecutive month for the single-digit growth of M2. And just now, Deputy Governor Yi, you mentioned that in this year's government work report, no target for the growth of M2 is set, and it is mentioned that it is important to maintain moderate growth for M2. So how to understand the meaning of moderate growth, and what is your forecast for money supply in 2018? Thank you.
这个问题呢，实际上刚才易纲行长呢也已经说到了。
Mr. Yi has already mentioned about that. The indicator M2 is always changing. And that is due to the changing situation of financial market. It is difficult to assess financial policies by M2. In your question, you mentioned that if we assume that M2 assessment will maintain the same, and the nominal GDP represent the actual GDP plus the GDP index. If they are all the same, then our financial policy will be not easing or tightening, but at an appropriate rate. However, if M2's growth rate is faster than the nominal, then the policy will be easing, or vice versa. In general, we assume that they will remain the same. More importantly, a more significant indicator is to look at the general inflation rate or the employment rate. Because only looking at GDP is not enough. We should always look at CPI and also employment rate, so to assess the easing or tightening of money policy. In the future, we will focus more from the quantity to the price. For example, the market price level, and make a comparison between that to the CPI. In China, currently the M2's growth rate is 8.8%, and that is in close relation with the nominal GDP. Also, from last year, the growth rate of M2 is a little bit lower than the nominal GDP because we should leave some space to stocking. Because if the lake's water, the bauxitic water is already very deep, then the newcomers will be lower. In general, we cannot just provide you with a very brief indicator to let you understand the situation or the relation or the judgment, because this is kind of a complicated that should take consideration of all indicators. Thank you.
右边数第3位这个男记者，对，就穿黑白毛衣的这个。
您好，我是香港南华早报的记者。去年内地和香港开通了债券通，但仅仅是北向通，让这个香港的投资者可以投资内地的债券市场。请问今年会开通南向通吗？大概是什么时间？会考虑哪些因素？还有周行长，在您漫长的行长生涯里面，有哪些您觉得特别难忘和特别遗憾的时刻？谢谢。
With South China Morning Post, we've noted that last year, Bond Connect was established between the mainland and Hong Kong, but at the moment, only the North Bond Connect is in operation, which means Hong Kong investors can now invest in the bond markets on the mainland. My question is, when will the South Bond Connect be established, and what factors will be taken into account for its establishment? Another question is a personal question for Governor Zhou. In your long career as the governor of the PBOC, what are the unforgettable moments and what are the regrets for you? Thank you.
金融市场的开放呢，绝大多数都是双向的啊。
For the opening up of the financial sector, most of the time it witnesses the mutual openness. And the single-way openness relies on the conditions of the exact social market. Hong Kong as an international harbor of financial sector, it has its merits and also shortcomings. But there are insufficient commodities which can be invested in. However, in Chinese mainland, there are a huge market, and many enterprises are financing and doing business in Chinese mainland market. If we will open the South Bond Connect, there is not big difficulties. If there is demand, we can achieve this. So generally speaking, the mutual openness of financial sector will continue to grow. And for your second question, after long years of working in financial sector, there are so many things. So it is difficult to select out the unforgettable and regrets. I think the name of today's press conference is very good. That's the financial reform and the development. I'm honored to be here to talk with you in order to promote and proceed China's financial development. Thank you.
谢谢主持人。
我是来自第一财经的记者。我的问题是，目前央行正在牵头制定资产管理行业的监管规则。那么，央行出于哪些考虑来出台这项规则？目前规则的进展如何？什么时候能够正式推出？以及推出之后是不是会对金融市场带来冲击？谢谢。
With China business news, the PBOC is leading efforts to formulate new rules on asset management. What are the basic considerations of the PBOC? What is the progress so far? When will the new rules be adopted? And when it is adopted, will it impact the financial market? Thank you.
这个资管方面呢，这个
The development of asset management has been going normal. However, there are some misbehaviors and fraud practice. For example, they have different practice used by using the name of asset management. These are the loopholes that we need to roll out. From the perspective of PBOC, Deputy Governor of Fan Yifei is responsible for this aspect. And however, he's not here. That's why I'll pass this question to Mr. Fan. The regulation directory establishment has been looking for the opinion of general public. And we have already gathered a lot of suggestions from the public as well as from various financial institutions. And we will definitely look into those suggestions. From our consideration, we will basically think about how to address the issues in asset management as well as the risks. And also, after we launch those new rules, what the impact could be, we will find a good balance between the two. Currently, PBOC will coordinate with stakeholders to revise the new rules and new regulations, and we will launch these new rules as soon as possible. Thank you.
右区第6排左一那个穿黄衣服的女记者。
感谢主持人。我的问题是关于数字货币的，就是央行此前说正在研究发行数字货币，那么想问一下现在的进展如何？对于数字货币的正式问世是否有时间表和路线图？还有一个问题是想问一下周行长，您如何看待未来数字货币的应用前景？谢谢。
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My question is about digital currency. We have learned that the PBOC is doing research on its digital currency. My question is, what is the progress of the research so far? Could you please share with us a timetable and roadmap for its development? And Governor Zhou, how do you see the prospects of digital currency? Thank you.
没有说你的媒体的名称。
I'm with Securities Times.
可能呢，大家也注意到呢，这个
You may have noticed the PBOC, since 3 years ago, we've started and organized the research and meetings on digital currency. And later on, we established the Digital Currency Research Institute of PBOC. And recently, we've initiated a distributed research and development with the other financial institutions. And we adopt multiple policies and plans and relying on market cooperation in order to conduct research and development on digital currency. In people's mind, there are different concepts of digital currency. We call it DCEP, electronic payment, and digital currency. In terms of electronic payment, what does we pay? Through mobile communications or other internet, all the information are transmitted by digital numbers. So the electronic platform also has the digital characteristics. First, we want to make it clear that the goal of doing research on digital currency is not simply to apply any technology. Indeed, we are working on the wholesale payment convenience and low cost, and also security. These can also be based on the blockchain or distributed accounting system, that's DLT. And can also be based on the current electronic payment system and can be transformed into new technology. Currently worldwide, the technological trend for digital currency have primitive types and clarification. Generally speaking, the development of a digital currency has its destiny with the financial technological development, and in future it will further develop and may also narrow down and may disappear one day. There are multiple possibilities. During this whole process, we need to keep in mind the stability of the financial sector and to prevent risks. The digital currency is still kind of currency. It still needs to be abided by the regulations. And we also need to safeguard the safety and the security of the consumption and prevent the consumers from being violated. And we will prevent from the real risks and losses. So before we take it into practice, we need to make tests and examinations and then publicize it. In the year of 2017, PBOC organized the digital currency and electronic payment research projects, which are approved by the State Council, and it progressed well. As you may see from the market, the digital currency, in terms of some aspects, there were risks and contradictions and controversial words. That's because for some technologies, they are not focused on the practical use of digital currency. They actually went to the virtual asset business, which need more careful policies. The virtual asset business not appropriate for China's concept of serving real economy. So during this whole process, we don't need to worry. We just need to uphold the prudent and steady pace of research and testing. We need to go with the right direction and improve the efficiency and lower the cost in order to prevent the speculation. Hence, I just simply introduced the the current stage and plan of research and development. And later on, we will enter in the stage of testing. That's what I can say by far. Thank you.
中区最后一排左边第3位记者，男记者。
谢谢主持人，我是日本经济新闻的记者。从2016年的下半年开始，中国政府加大对资本外流管制的力度，这导致人民币的国际化的进程的有所放缓。你怎样看待未来中国的资本项目的开放的进展？谢谢。
With Nikkei News, since the first half of 2016, the Chinese government has stepped up management of capital outflow, which I believe has led to a somewhat slowdown of RMB internationalization. My question is, how do you view the prospects of the opening up of China's capital market? Thank you.
我个人并不认为说是有什么实质性的变化。
In my own opinion, I don't see any real changes. The capital projects are convertible. These are not the eventual goal of the reform. We just want to serve the involvement interconnection between China's economy and the world. That's why we uphold openness. And to make the currency convertible. Meanwhile, we should also prevent risks. The financial risks include the practical risks and anti-money laundering and anti-terrorism financing. And we also mentioned due to the incompleteness of the world financial sector, sometimes there may be negative impacts on developing countries. All of these reasons and elements should be considered. In the course of reform and opening up, it's difficult to go a straight line. We may identify problems from time to time, and we just timely adjust it. We set out plans and concrete measures to adjust it and revise it, and eventually we may proceed our way. I'm convinced with China on the way of reform and opening up since 1990s, we firstly initiated to make RMB as a convertible currency in 1993. And after that, China as a great nation has conducted reforms in multiple aspects. The two challenges, most difficult challenges, were the financial crisis in Asia and the 2008 global financial crisis. Once the problem emerges, people will evaluate and think about the policy. But generally speaking, China has made a prudent and steady growth and way in this process, and finally we will achieve the goal of reform and opening up. For the money and capital convertible policy, on the one hand, we directly invest. The direction is FDI and ODI. This is in terms of direct investment. It is very convenient in new era. And second is the openness of the market. And in future, China will broaden its market and make more portable and portfolio asset products, and to make the currency convertible. And there will be reform in the regulations and the services to make it more convenient, and there will be data transparency and anti-laundering, anti-terrorism financing reforms. These are all will be prudently proceeded. In the time, we will see domestic market will be broadened. In terms of a share market and bond market, there will be opening up for these markets as well. And one of the vital things here is to control the risks and prevent the risks. We just need to make the opening up policy appropriate, and then we can prevent risks during this process and to offer convenience to foreign investors and improve the efficiency.
台的右边第2位女记者。
谢谢主持人。新华社记者提问：近2年，比特币 ICO 融资等虚拟货币平台一直是一个非常热门的话题。我们看到央行和各个监管部门也采取了强力的监管，也取得了一些初步的成效。请问这是出于何种考虑呢？下一步我们还将出台什么样的监管政策？谢谢。
With Xinhua News Agency, in the past couple of years, Bitcoin, ICO financing, and other virtual money platforms have been a hot topic. The strong regulatory measures of the PBOC and other agencies have produced some initial results. What are the considerations behind those measures? And what further regulatory steps will be taken? Thank you.
刚才您说到的那些措施，肯定你已经都观察到了，是吧？你是说背后有什么考虑？
I'm sure you have already observed those measures. Our consideration behind those measures have been talked about between the previous rounds of Q&A. PBOC has started our research in digital currency, and we conducted seminars as well as roundtables in a very early stage. And that's our attitude towards technology. We also pay great attention to blockchain as well as other crypto technology. In the meanwhile, all this research should be very cautious and prudent. For example, Bitcoin or other digital currency is coming out into the market too fast. They're not prudent enough. If a fast expansion could lead to negative impact on the consumers, and also pose unpredictable impact onto the financial market. New technology is in general a good thing. However, apart from the market drive, we should also consider the broad view. You should not look into the policy loopholes and try to have some breakthrough events. And also before your investment and operation, you should always consider the relationship with the investors and consumers. If your test hasn't been done quite well or you haven't prepared well enough, to expand rapidly can lead to great issues. From the perspective of PBOC, we think that imprudent products should stop. And some promising products should also go through a very serious test phase. Last August, PBOC stopped ICO. And later on, the direct transaction between Bitcoin and RMB was stopped. And the virtual coins, such as Bitcoin, as a payment vehicle like our cash, is not recognized by PBOC and by the banking system. We would not provide relevant service to this kind of practice. In the future, first of all, we consider that a dynamic process, and that all depends on the technological development, as well as the test result, and also the assessment result. We are still observing the total testing phase. Just as I mentioned, when considering and observing those new technology, we should always keep in mind our service direction. We should always not create speculation products to create some dreams for the public that they can be wealthy immediately. We should always provide consumers and retailing market efficient, low risk, and safe protection. Also, to have an overall view, we must never go against with the existing financial order and financial rules. And we must not have a direct contradiction to the existing financial regulations. If you want to revolutionize the current financial market, you should always have a series of comprehensive tests before you launch your product. We sincerely believe that the technology development is a dynamic process, and we are still exploring. I'm not saying that in the future there will be a definite regulatory policy. PBOC will always stay in close links with the market and listen to the suggestions and opinions from the public. Thank you.
右边第二个。
谢谢主持人。中新社中新网记者提问。想请问周行长，当前金融控股公司监管办法的制定进展情况如何？那么金融控股公司监管办法主要会聚焦在哪些方面？它与单独对证券、银行等金融公司的监管有哪些不同？谢谢。
With China News Service, my question is for Governor Zhou. What is the progress so far in the formulation of the regulatory policy on financial holding companies? And in what areas will the regulatory policy be focused on? And how will this policy be different from those policies and regulations on securities and banking sector? Thank you.
金融控股公司呢，这个
First of all, there are some financial holding practice in the market. Some of them is called financial holding company and some of them not. However, they have already have the practice and function of financial holding comprised companies. And they exist in different sectors, including bond, security, and banking. that also bear some risks. All of these institutions should be included into the regulatory range of financial holding companies. Currently, the regulatory policy is in exploring. First of all, financial sector should always rely on capitals. Only when we have enough capital can we have a solid foundation to prevent risk. A considerable amount of capital is the prerequisite. Currently, the existing financial holding practice and operation is not completed enough or real enough. And some of them are fraud. The actual or the authenticity of capital and also the quality of capital is of vital significance. Secondly, since you are in financial holding practice, then the equity structure of the group and the stakeholders' equity structure should be transparent enough. If they are not transparent, then risk or some disobey of regulation practice should happen. Currently, the equity structure and also the stakeholders' structure's attention and consideration in that area will expose a lot of issues. If the equity structure is clear enough, then the financial institute within the group should strengthen their interrelated transactions regulation. First of all, the financial institute and also their transaction to the non-financial institutes, interrelated transaction can lead to a lot of risk. That's why we should enhance our regulation on that area. I believe the existing financial holding companies regulation should start from the launching of regulatory policies, and we will also learn experience from the international arena to have further consideration. Just as Governor Zhou has given you a comprehensive explanation, the financial market has been developing rapidly, and there are some risks. For example, the financial risks, and also under the framework of financial risk, the risks, some of them are very hidden. In China, the regulation of financial holding companies have some loopholes, and the regulated body is unclear. That's why we were required to have a leading effort in terms of enhancing the regulatory rules of financial holding company. Governor Zhou have already given comprehensive explanation. For example, we need to strengthen the general regulation of financial market to go against the fraud, capital, etc. We also need to strengthen our regulation in equity structure. The total structure should be very clear and transparent. We also should strengthen the management of interrelated trading. We also should have a firewall between the financial institute and non-financial institute. Thank you.
谢谢主持人，中央人民广播电台记者。从近几年的实践来看呢，类似于 P2P 或者是比特币这样的金融创新，往往是起于微，但是发展蔓延十分迅速。我的问题是我们未来考虑构建一个什么样的创新监管的体系或机制，来确保对这种金融活动新萌芽早发现，对可能存在的风险进行早的预防呢？谢谢。
With China National Radio, we have noticed that financial regulation can spread very fast, such as P2P and Bitcoin. What kind of regulatory system can the PBOC build to conduct early regulation over emerging financial activities and early prevention of risks? Thank you.
应该说呢，这也是最近出现的这个新课题。
This is a new subject. In the past, financial sector has been coordinated with the scientific and the technological departments and often use their applications. At the early stage of the computers and the telecommunications and also remote communications emergence and computing calculation, you can see in the society, in the financial sector, no matter banks nor security markets are the biggest buyer of computers and the users. The financial system was one of the earliest to use clouding storage in order to store the consumer's data. You can see the share exchanging or stock exchanging, or have the high-speed computing technology, and also have the clouding database. But in recently, some technologies developed too fast. Also, in the past, the application of scientific and technological were not common, and when people use it, the direction can be controlled. But now, because there are more new products, we need to closely follow it and supervise it. If there are more new technologies which are immediately applied to the new financial transactions or to be the new financial products, this process should be prudent and careful. You need to apply for the approval and receive evaluation and assessment. After this careful assessment, you can proceed and release the products. This is also the consumer protection and investor protection, because the products will receive effects from the society. And we also need to enhance the investor and consumer trainings in order to update them with the new products. Many of the new products are not familiar to these investors and consumers. If they want to use it well, first they need to make clear of it. you cannot only rely on regulations. You also need to keep yourself updated with the new products, and you should abide by the regulations. And finally, we need to strengthen the publicizing and education and training in order to make consumers and investors responsible for themselves.
中区第4排，穿灰内衣的黑外衣的女记者，对。
谢谢，我是凤凰卫视的记者。我们有个关于信贷管理的问题，我们也注意到去年年底，监管层加强了对于这个表外融资的管理，但也导致表内的信贷规模激增。那么想问一下，今年央行是否能够容忍这个信贷规模出现大规模的增长？那是否会采取一些限制的措施？那如果由于额度的限制导致这个融资需求得不到满足，那么实际利率的增长又是否会倒逼央行来进行加息？谢谢。
With Phoenix TV. My question is about the management of credit. We have noted that last year, due to relevant regulations, some funds have moved from the off-balance sheet to the balance sheet, and we have noticed a surge in the funds in balance sheet. My question is, the market also, does the PBOC need to raise deposit and lending benchmark rate, and if the rate is kept unchanged, what impact will it have? Thank you.
您提的这个问题呢，应该说从央行的角度，我们更关心宏观的。
The question you raised, from the perspective of the central bank, we are more interested in the general figure, but for relevant departments, they may show more interest in their related figures. Just like you mentioned, they move the off-balance sheet to the balance sheet and witness a surge in the imbalance sheet. For some people, they may think it's too fast, but from the macro scope, in PBOC's mind and opinion, we look at the general indicator to evaluate the development in financial sector and employment and consuming price. In the past, some regulations violated actions or misbehaviors can be adjusted. If they are moved to balance sheet, this will benefit them. Now, the monetary supply in the market are relying on the general figure, but not just one single product, not just the credit loan. And now it's from more macro scope. The price is more comprehensive. Of course, there are multiple products like the security, the bond, and the credit, but generally speaking, the total price represents the situation of macroeconomy. Due to time limits, this is the last question.
这个第4排，左边第3位记者。
谢谢主持人，我是香港商报新媒体的记者。我想问的是呢，近期呢港元的汇率持续走弱，已经达到了有联系汇率以来的最低点，所以呢，我看到有声音讲，香港需要重新检视联系汇率制度。97年的时候呢，中央是大力支持香港维护联系汇率制度的。那么我想知道的是，央行到现在如何定位港元的地位和作用，包括联系汇率制度的地位和作用。谢谢。
With Hong Kong Commercial Daily, we have noted that the Hong Kong dollar has depreciated recently, hitting a new low, and there are some people in Hong Kong who are saying that Hong Kong needs to reduce its deficit and probably consider the adjustment of its exchange rate mechanism. My question is, How does the PBOC view the role of Hong Kong dollar, and is there any plan to change its exchange rate mechanism? Thank you.
香港呢，这个是特别行政区。
Hong Kong is a special administration region, and it has a high level of authority. After Hong Kong returned to China, all of these operation systems have been explained at that time. Currently, Hong Kong is connected to US dollar exchange rate. And later there is some nuance adjustment, and that's within 5 cents. This is all upholding the authority of Hong Kong's own decision. From the perspective of PBOC, we respect Hong Kong's policy-making decision, and we will try our best to support and coordinate Hong Kong's policy and exchange rate mechanism. However, Hong Kong has a close link with the mainland China in terms of economy, but had a closer link with the US in terms of exchange rate. This is all within our expectation. Hong Kong's choice has its own strength and weakness. However, there are not that many options. You cannot just only take the advantage and leave out the disadvantage. We will not have too much judgment or interference on Hong Kong's financial decision. And we highly respect Hong Kong's own decision. In the existing mechanism, we can have some existence to ensure the stability of the existing exchange rate mechanism to try to avoid the disadvantage aspect. Thank you. Due to the limitation of time, this is the end of today's press conference. Thank you, Mr. Zhou Xiaochuan. Thanks, Yigang, and thanks the press friends.